understand that you started with an idea that was kind of one line, and you expected a little bit more than that, Charlie. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was just the idea that we wanted to work together, and Mark has done such an amazing thing with young filmmakers that are hungry and wanting to make movies, and he sort of has been given multiple people the shot to do that, and so for me it was sort of like I had this chance to make a movie, me and my writing partner Justin, and Mark said I have an idea, and then he emailed me. It's just essentially one or two lines that sort of hints at possibly, where the movie goes. And I sent it to Justin, and Justin was like, "Oh, I think you cut off the email because the rest of the story's not there." And I was like, "No, that's it. We got to come up with the rest." And so it was good. It forced us to go kind of take this idea and sort of reverse engineer and figure out what a story is to lead up to this point. And so we fleshed out characters, and we knew that we could shoot at this house up in Ojai, which is the town that I grew up in. And so we kind of took all the elements that we had, and we reverse engineered and went back and came up with these characters and this situation, and that was that.
Was that an idea that you'd been thinking about for a while, Mark?
I keep a little document on my computer that has a bunch of movie ideas, some of them a lot less fleshed out than others. And it wasn't something I'd had around for a while, but I knew that Charlie was very good at, he's very good visually. He was interested in making something more genre-oriented that could work well with what I do in kind of more the relationship space. So there was something in the idea that I felt like, if he can come up with something here, great. But I mean, it really was very, very little. It was just a basic concept of what turns out to be the twist in our film. And the whole rest of the world, he and Justin came up with on their own.
The movie part itself, when you shoot something like that, is there a certain dynamic of how you have to put that together? Since there is different things you have to do with everybody, and it's like any movie, everybody's emotions change throughout a movie. Yeah. Do you try to stick to one thing to finish something, or do you have to kind of go around?
Well, we shot this movie in 15 days. There are some technical challenges. There are some effects in the film. We try to shoot things in order as much as possible so that it can be an organic progression of the relationships. There's also some dialogue improvisation in the film, and that always helps you to shoot in order. So we didn't do any crazy demarcations of the subplots in the film.
Cool.
So how much improv overall? Just a lot?
Well, we had a very detailed script, which is essentially it was a script that was 50 pages, so it was everything beaded out each scene, but there wasn't really dialogue in the document. And then so we had an idea of exactly what was happening story-wise, sort of character-wise where they were at in the script, and then these guys would improv, and we'd kind of rehearse the scene before we'd shoot it, and we'd figure out the direction we were going with it. And so it was a lot of trial and error and different minds coming in and sort of adjusting stuff, but it was really Mark and Lizzie kind of spearheading that dialogue, and then Justin would script pages sometimes and give us the next day's scenes, and we use a lot of that stuff, and we'd also use portions of it were just timing wise, okay, say 3 lines can be improv, and then it needs to shift and go into this kind of story plot. And so it was a real interesting way to make a movie. I had never done that before. Mark felt comfortable in that space, and so we all kind of brought something different to it, and just kind of collaborated in a way that worked out.
Did you do a lot of takes the way I remember your brother came in for Cyrus and talked about doing many takes and then editing it many times?
Very, very different process from the way Cyrus worked. My brother and I wrote a very traditional script for Cyrus, and we would improvise based on that script, and we would explore and find lots of different things. And the main thing we had going in a movie like Cyrus was the interpersonal relationship dynamics. So we had to mine that down to the very minutia, and so we would shoot a lot of takes, and it was almost like editing a documentary where you're sifting through lots of stuff, trying to find those nuggets. In a film like the one I love, we not only did less takes because we had less time, but it's a more intricately plotted movie. And when you see the film, people will see that it's really thumping along with this almost sci-fi plot line, and so there's actually less room for exploration in a movie like this, even though technically there was no written dialogue. It in many ways is more hemmed in than a movie where you're just fully improvising wherever it can go.
Did any of the improv that came out of any of the scenes that you did change what you were going to do the next day?
There's no plot changes. The plot was always set in stone. But to give you an example of how the improv can inform where the movie goes and why you might want to shoot in order, it's usually based on chemistry. So we'll say, okay, so this is the fight scene between Ethan and Sophie. We think it's going to go to like an 8 out of a 10. But when we get in there, sometimes you only hit a 6, or sometimes you hit a 10. And then you say, oh my gosh. So because they got so angry with each other, the apology that we shoot tomorrow is going to have to be a little more intense. Or because they didn't get as angry as we thought, the apology can be laden with some sarcasm, because now we know we have some sweetness here. So those are the levels of nuance that you're dealing with, more so than actual plot points.
Well, talking about shooting in that dynamic, I mean, you and Elizabeth had to really have some chemistry. Did you know that going in, or did you guys just get lucky?
We knew each other socially, and we were like pizza and beer friends, and we felt like we could do a couple realistically, and we got each other's sense of humor. She knew how to push my buttons. She's really smart. I mean, whip smart, and so we felt like we're going to be able to get that right. I didn't know what it was going to be like when a lot of the conflict came up, and you kind of don't know that a lot of times. But in my experience, if you are like a student of the human condition, you're obsessed with people and interpersonal dynamics, and you generally like the person you're acting across from, you're going to have chemistry.
What did you do to help her get comfortable with it? This is a very different part for her.
I didn't do anything. She was nervous coming in, and Charlie was very good with her. Charlie was very comfortable on set. He's grown up on sets his whole life. He's a very relaxed director. He's very loving and very gentle. Good sweet boy. Good sweet boy. And so he definitely spent some time with her, talking and making her feel comfortable. But she was great right out of the box at the improvisation. And I think partially her coming off of Mad Men, where everything is so tightly scripted, it was fun for her, even though she was a little nervous, to be so free and kind of come up with a lot of her own dialogue.
Did you guys look at anybody else, or was she kind of the first initial choice and it looked
She
great?
was the first one. I brought her up to the guys. We talked about it for a day, and they were like, let's do it. And I texted her, sent her the document, and then that night she was like, I'm in, let's do it. There's a momentum to these movies, these little movies, that if you just drive that train like 100 miles an hour and just make it feel like get on board or you're going to lose out, they can tend to kind of almost be self-fulfilling in that way.
Have you ever worked with like an actor or an actress that wasn't comfortable with improv? Because Mark, you're like the improv king.
No, I'm not the improv
Yes,
king.
you are.
Like I'll be honest with you. Like I go to like Upright Citizens Brigade and watch like those truly trained comedians do what they do, and they're fucking incredible. Like what they do is I can't do that. What I'm good at is like dramatic and story improv. Like I can make relationships seem realistic. I can move a story forward. I'm not good at like killing jokes and setting those things up.
I don't know, Mark. You're pretty fucking awesome in the league. So
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
that show is a testament to improv.
Well, I appreciate that.
So
I'm trying to think if there's someone I've worked with that was not good at improv, and I probably wouldn't throw him under the bus anyway.
like if you and I were in a movie acting together, and I knew that you were on board, I'd be nervous as hell because from the league and stuff. So.
I mean, Lizzie said she was nervous
She was
going
nervous,
in, but
yeah.
she was incredible, and we learned so much from each other.
Yeah.
She is very much of a non-verbal actor. Like you see everything in her eyes. I'm extremely verbal, and so towards the end of the film, I noticed she was coming up with her words, and I was coming down with mine, and we started to kind of meet in the middle.
Which was interesting to edit it, because you could really see it. You can see Mark in the editing room where he's like, he's a director.
I'm
right?
trying to start making faces.
He's like, no, he knows something that I might need in the editing room, so he's going to give it to me. And then Lizzie doesn't wear that hat, so she's just sort of like, cameras aren't there, and she's just sort of giving this look, and not saying anything, and it's giving just as much as what Mark's giving. So it was kind of
There's probably a great blooper reel of all of the terrible exposition line options that I gave you, just in case something wasn't clear.
there's
a couple of really
take
bad.
a sip of
I'm
my
gonna take
tea
a sip of my
right
tea.
now.
Yeah. There's some bad ones in there for sure.
So without obviously giving any away spoilers or anything, were there any challenges to working with this kind of stuff, this kind of idea, content,
Yeah.
the 15 days?
I think the effects were tough.
Yeah, I think we took this model of an intimate, low budget, dramedy kind of thing that's been done before, and we pushed the limits. We wanted to take it as far as we can, and so there's an element of sort of sci-fi genre, mystery, and so there are effects to the film, and since we're doing it in this kind of small, intimate, low budget way, that was difficult to incorporate these kind of bigger things that belong.
That normally
like
cost a shitload of money.
Yeah, they
basically.
belong in a big studio movie. So that was a challenge, and to kind of fit that in the 15-day model, it was just pretty much spending a lot of time in pre-production, doing the homework, and making sure, at least on mine, that I was prepared and knew exactly what I wanted to shoot, and then if something natural and organic came in the moment, then I could throw it out, but at least I sort of had the blueprint, and so it was mostly about putting in the time, and
I understand you used different lenses and filters and so on to set moods. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well there's kind of, I looked at, we're on one property, but there's a lot of scenes in a guest house and in a main house, and so I kind of viewed those as two different characters in the movie, and so because in this guest house, we have this sort of magical realism thing going on, this sort of sci-fi aspect happening there. I used anamorphic lenses, which give this sort of weird warpy feel, especially when you're racking focus, and that kind of gave this slightly surreal, kind of jarring feel, and then used brighter colors, and it was all dolly and shot on sticks there, and then everything in the main house was kind of the opposite. It was like darker colors. We did mostly handheld and spherical lenses, so everything kind of feels natural and real. And so for me, it was just, it's not something that I think people necessarily watch and they're like, he used anamorphic lenses, but there is a feeling, I think, that you get in these two spaces that you can't sort of pinpoint, but hopefully people feel different things in those spaces.
It's easy to look around, and it's funny, you watch the trend in movies and then you talk to friends and marriages these days are just, it's tough. It's tough to be married. I mean, everybody's fighting and nobody gets along, it seems like. Do you think this storyline makes that a great date night movie where everybody can go and go, yeah, we fight like that, we don't get along, we need to go through therapy, we've been through therapy and it was stupid. So is that what makes a premise like this a great date night movie?
To me, the thing that makes this a date movie is that it is completely open to interpretation as to what happens, and honestly as to how they feel about what is going on with the couples. And I find that some people feel the film is dark in a lot of ways, and then some people feel that it's like very playful and fun, and a lot of it is about what baggage those people are bringing with them into the viewing of the movie and what their relationships are like, I personally feel like when I watch the movie, there's a tremendous amount of hope and goodwill in the way that some of these scenes play out, and the way that some of the characters fight for the relationship and what they're willing to do. The central question at hand for me here is your relationship worth fighting for, or should relationships not be that much work, and should you just cast it off and try a new one? And I find people to be in that spot a lot when I talk to them, and maybe it's because we're in relatively prosperous times, and so now that we're not dealing with like the Great Depression, we look inward and find more problems there. I don't know, but it's in the conversations that I have.
Yeah, I think it was fun too to make a movie that that didn't take the sort of movie rules and ideas of like what a relationship is, and hopefully gave a realistic portrayal of and obviously there's surreal things going on, but who these characters are and what they're going through, and that is something that we can connect to. It's not the black and white, it's the gray area that I think a lot of studio movies don't really play in. They sort of play at this idealized version of what we say relationships are, but it's not really what relationships are. And so we wanted them to feel messy, and we wanted people to say like, oh, I've been in that fight, or like I can connect to that character. And if we did our job right and people make those connections, then we can take it to a kind of wacky, surreal place because we've grounded it and making them feel real. So whatever's happening, hopefully people just jump on board with.
Well, that's what was so great about it, is because it was really fresh and original. Like, it's just something that you do not expect in
Right.
a normal, like, romantic comedy or something like that.
Were there any things that you put in scenes that you said, I hope they get this? I hope they pick up on
The
it?
whole movie. We really felt like we were taking a big swing. You know, we felt like we were trying something that, you know, and this is no slight to this movie, but a movie like Your Sister's Sister that I made 2 years ago, we felt like we had our hands on that movie. We knew what to do with that movie, and I was never worried that movie was going to be bad. We were worried that this movie could be terrible if we didn't do it right, that people might just think it's stupid. So we were constantly on our toes and questioning ourselves and saying, is this right? What can we do to make this better? And there's a vitality when making a film like that you know, is exciting and scary, but you know, the whole thing definitely felt precarious for sure.
Is there a fear
This
that
is the last question.
that everything will
Sorry,
be
interrupt.
will be fine, and then come Monday with social media, the cash just gonna be out of the bag everywhere? Is there that fear now with social
Well,
media?
we thought that at Sundance. You know, we premiered at Sundance, and we were like, this is going to be the only viewing experience that people are going to see it knowing nothing, and that's it. And then the first review comes out, and it's basically, here's the movie, we really liked it, and we're not going to tell you what it's about. You got to go experience it for yourself. And that was such an incredible thing. We're like, wait a minute, maybe we can continue that and use that, you know, as a way to kind of promote the movie, because it is the best way to experience the movie. And so yeah, it's who knows what'll happen when it goes out bigger. But it's I think the greatest compliment I've gotten about the movie is just that, you know, when talking to you guys, is people saying, we would have spoiled it if it wasn't a good movie.
Yeah.
You know, we wouldn't have cared to keep it, but we actually care to keep that experience.
And we've created a poster and a trailer that don't tell you what it's about. And that was, you know, a really big credit to Radius, our company who's releasing this movie, that they wanted to honor that. And we might pay the price for that by not having people come out to see it, but hopefully they'll take the leap.